Alright, here's a video how to construct a confidence interval for the population mean. However, in this scenario, I do not know the standard deviation of the population. And when that happens, what you're going to do is you're going to follow these set of steps. Okay, these steps, you use it when they ask you to find a confidence interval for the population mean, but you do not know the standard deviation of the population. So step number one, you need to find who is the sample size, N, who is the sample mean, X bar, and who is the standard deviation, S. Okay, so if we read this problem in a random sample, 20 customers at a local fast food restaurant, the mean waiting time to order is 95 seconds and the standard deviation is 21 seconds. Assume the wait times are normally distributed and construct a 90% confidence interval for the mean wait time of all customers. Now in this problem, nowhere here they told me that I know the standard deviation of the population. I know the standard deviation, but not of the population. I know the sample. So step number one, like I showed you before, let me show you that again. We're going to find N, the sample size. So in this case, it's 20. Okay. What else do I need to find out? I need to find X bar. X bar is the sample mean. The mean is 95 seconds. Okay, that's X bar. And what else I need to find? I need to find the standard deviation of the sample, S, and that will be 21 seconds. And I did step number one. Step number two, I have to find something called degrees of freedom. And the degrees of freedom, what you do is you take the sample size N and you subtract 1. That's what we call degrees of freedom. And there's a reason we need to find this out. We're going to use a new calculator called the student T calculator. And one of the things they're going to ask me, one of the information they're going to ask me is the degrees of freedom. So if my sample size is 20, and I subtract 1, then my degrees of freedom is going to be 19. 20 minus 1 is 19. The next thing I need to find in that same step, step number 2, I got the degrees of freedom. They asked me to find the critical value. Now here, the critical value has a label that is called TC. And what that label is telling you, you're using a new calculator called the T calculator. Okay, and to use the T calculator, you need to know your confidence level. And right now here, they ask me for a 90% confidence interval. So that means the level of confidence is 90%. So what do I do with the 90%? I'm going to go to this calculator called Student T. Okay, the link is posted in the week 5 lecture notes, and you can see it says Student T calculator. This calculator is asking me for two things. Look at the first thing it's asking me, the degrees of freedom, which is in this case is 19. That's what I'm going to type in there. The second thing it's asking me is for the probability level. Now careful, because the probability level is not the same thing as the confidence level. See, this 90% you see here, that's a confidence level. This calculator is asking me for a probability level. So what I do is I take 100% and subtract the confidence level, 90%. So I get 10%. And what I do is I change the 10% to a decimal, so that will be 0.10. Let me say that again. How did I get that 0.10? The probability level is not the same thing as the confidence level. 90% is confidence level. This calculator is asking me for probability level. So how do I find the probability level? Take the 100%, that's the maximum percent allowed, subtract the confidence level, 90%, I get 10%, and 10% as a decimal is 0.10. Now click calculate. And when you click calculate, you're going to find several T values. See, we have a T value that is called right tail, and we have a T value called two tail. The one that we're using is the one that says two tail. Okay, it says plus minus 1.7 blah blah blah. Okay, however, when you take the two-tail value, you're going to take always the positive. So if I round to 3 decimal places, that will be 1.729. And that is my TC, my critical value. And I did step number 2. Okay, identify the degrees of freedom, which we did, and the critical value, TC. Here we go with step number 3. We're going to find the margin of error. How much more or less my guess about the population mean is going to be off. That's what we call margin of error. And we use this formula. And what do we do with formulas? We plug in. Okay, so I'm going to plug in this formula. TC 1.729, S 21, N 20. When I plug it in, this is what you're going to have. And when I work this out, I simplify, I get 8.1. So this is my margin of error. Okay, let's go to the last step, step number 4. I'm going to make my interval. I'm going to take the X bars, okay, X bar 95. I'm going to subtract my margin of error, which is 8.1, and that's how I get the left end or the left side of the interval. The right side of the interval, take the same two numbers, 95, the X bar, and the E, 8.1, and add them. And that's how you get the right end. And that's what I'm going to show you right here. Okay, so 95, subtract the 8.1, that's the left end. 95, add the 8.1, I get the right end. And here's the interval. Okay, and then I had to make an interpretation. So here's the interpretation. We are 90% confident that the mean wait time for all customers is going to be in between these two numbers, 86.9 and 103.1 seconds. And that's how you create the interval.